Welcome back to the Pagan Hearth community. Whether you're a longtime practitioner, just beginning your journey, or simply curious about the old ways of our ancestors, I hope you'll find something here that deepens your understanding and strengthens your relationships with the gods, the spirits, and the world around you. Today, we're talking about one of my favorite festivals of the year, and not just because it's my son's birthday, Lughnassadh, the first of the great harvest festivals. It's a celebration that is often reduced to fresh bread, corn dollies, and late summer aesthetics. While those things certainly have their place, they barely scratch the surface of what this holy day represents. Because Lughnassadh isn't simply about agriculture. It's about labor and gratitude and sacrifice. It's about community. And perhaps most importantly, it's about civilization itself. Imagine standing in a grocery store. Rows on rows of fresh produce, shelves lined with bread, flour, honey, beer, meat, fruit. Everything you need is available with barely a second thought. It's easy to forget how extraordinary that really is. Every loaf of bread represents months of work. Someone plowed that soil. Someone planted the seed, prayed for rain. Someone weeded the fields and harvested the grain. Someone else milled the flour, and someone makes the bread. Every meal we eat represents thousands of years of accumulated knowledge and countless hours of human labor. Lughnassadh asks us to remember that. Not because anyone should feel guilty for what we have, but because gratitude begins with remembering where our blessings come from. Lughnassadh, celebrated around the beginning of August, marks the first of 3 harvest festivals. Although many people know it by its Irish name, nearly every Indo-European culture observed some form of first fruit celebration. The Irish, of course, celebrate Lughnassadh. The Scots had Lùnastal. In Wales, Calan Awst marked the season. Across continental Europe, Celtic communities gathered to celebrate the first harvest, while Germanic and Roman peoples held their own festivals of grain, abundance, and thanksgiving. The names were different. The customs varied, but the underlying idea remained persistent throughout time. The first fruits of the harvest belong to the gods. Only after giving thanks does the community feast. This is one of those traditions that reminds us our ancestors weren't simply celebrating food. They were celebrating survival. A failed harvest could mean starvation. A successful one meant another year of life. No wonder they treated this season as sacred. The festival is named after the Irish god Lugh, known elsewhere as Lugh or Lugos. Unfortunately, many modern pagans often mistakenly reduce him to little more than a god of craftsmen. That description isn't exactly wrong, but it's woefully incomplete. Lugh, or Lugos, is called Samildánach, the many-skilled one. He is master of every art: warrior, smith, poet, musician, judge, carpenter, and king. Not just a craftsman. He's the embodiment of excellence itself. There's an old story in which Lugh arrives at the court of the Tuatha De Danann. The gatekeeper refuses him entry, saying, "They already have a smith." To which Lugh replies, "Well, I'm a warrior. We already have one." "Then I'm a poet. We already have one." This continues through nearly every profession imaginable, until finally Lugh asks, "Do you have anyone who is all of these things at once?" They don't, and so he's admitted. That story captured something profound. Lugh doesn't represent any one skill. He represents mastery. He reminds us that every craft, every science, every discipline has value. The gods gave us a world rich with possibility. Human skill transforms those possibilities into civilization. The harvest isn't merely nature. It's the cooperation between divine blessing, fertile land, favorable weather, and human effort. Without all four, there is no harvest. That's why Lugh presides over this festival. But no discussion of Lùnassadh would be complete without speaking of Tailtiu. According to Irish tradition, Tailtiu was the foster mother of Lugh. She cleared the forests of Ireland so fields could be planted. She transformed wilderness into farmland. She labored so intensely that she collapsed from exhaustion and died. In her honor, Lugh established funeral games, the Tailtiu, great assemblies of athletic competitions, legal judgments, music, trade, marriages, storytelling, and feasting. At first glance, this may seem like an unusual way to commemorate someone's death. But think about what Tailtiu represents. She gave everything she had so future generations could thrive. Her story reminds us that civilization always requires sacrifice. Every field was once a forest. Every road was once untamed ground. Every community exists because generations before us devoted their lives to building something they themselves would never fully enjoy. Every meal has a cost. Someone paid it, often many someones. Lughnassadh teaches us not to overlook those unseen sacrifices. This brings us to one of the oldest ideas in pagan religions, the offering of the first fruits. Nearly every ancient civilization had a similar concept. Before enjoying the harvest ourselves, we first returned a portion to the gods or the ancestors. Not because the gods needed our grain, they aren't hungry, but because gratitude sustains relationship. Here at the Pagan Hearth, we often speak about the gifting cycle, the sacred reciprocity that binds gods, spirits, ancestors, and humanity together. The Romans expressed it simply, do ut des, I give, so that you may give. That isn't transactional, it's a relationship. When we offer the first fruits, we acknowledge that we didn't create the harvest alone. The land nourished it, the rains watered it, the sun warmed it. The gods blessed it, and our ancestor preserved the knowledge that our communities used to share the labor. Then, and only then, did our own efforts bear fruit. That's why our rituals always follows the same pattern. Offer first, feast second. Gratitude always comes before celebration. Another thing modern people often forget is that Lughnassadh was never meant to be a private observance. It's a community festival. People traveled from across entire regions for hundreds of miles. Markets opened and goods were traded. Marriages were arranged. Laws were proclaimed and disputes settled. Athletics games were held. Poets performed and stories were shared. Children played and families reunited. People worshipped together. It was one of the great social gatherings of the year. Why? Because no one harvests alone. No one builds a civilization alone. Even the most independent farmer depends on blacksmiths and carpenters and millers, potters, merchants, teachers, priests, and neighbors. Every society is a web of reciprocal relationships. That truth hasn't changed simply because our economy has become more complicated. One of the recurring themes here at the Pagan Hearth is one of importance of community. Solitary practice certainly has its place. Sometimes it's necessary. But our ancestors inherently knew something we often take for granted. Religion isn't only personal, it's communal. Lughnassadh reminds us that our greatest achievements happen together. Like many ancient festivals, Lughnassadh has accumulated a few misconceptions over the years. One of the most common is the idea that it belongs exclusively to the modern Wheel of the Year. While the Wheel of the Year is a useful modern framework, harvest festivals long predate it by many centuries. Another misconception is that Lugh is somehow only relevant to Irish paganism. In reality, inscriptions to Lugh, or closely related forms of his name, appear throughout the Celtic world, from Gaul to Hispania and beyond. The Romans associated him with Mercury because of his patronage over skill and commerce, eloquence, and ingenuity. Though no Roman comparison captures the fullness of his character. And perhaps the greatest misunderstanding is reducing the festival to baking bread. Bread is wonderful. Bake it, bless it, share it. But don't stop there. Bread is the symbol. The festival is about everything that made the bread possible. So how might we celebrate Lughnassadh today? Offer the first portion of your meal to the gods. Bake some bread from scratch if you can. Remember every pair of hands that made the ingredients possible. Visit a local farmer's market and support the people who still cultivate the land today. Learn a new skill in honor of Lugh. Teach one of your own skills to someone else. Repair something instead of replacing it. Host a feast. Invite friends, family, your neighbor, or members of your local pagan community. Read poetry, play some music, compete in games, or volunteer your time. Make a charitable donation. Honor your teachers and your ancestors. And above all, practice gratitude intentionally. Not just saying thank you, but actually remembering why gratitude is deserved. Every harvest asks us a question. Do we consume without remembering? Or will we recognize that every blessing we enjoy is the culmination of countless gifts, the gifts of the gods and the gifts of the earth, our ancestors and our communities, and the gifts of those whose labor often goes unseen? Lughnassadh reminds us that abundance is never simply found. It's cultivated, protected, and shared. The gods bless the fields. The earth nourishes the seed. The rains and the sun sustain its growth. But it's through human hands, guided by skill, generosity, and community, that those gifts become bread upon our tables. This year, as you celebrate, offer first. Learn something new. Teach something you've mastered. And gather with your community to give thanks to the gods. And remember the countless generations of our ancestors whose sacrifices made your own life possible. May the many-skilled one inspire your hands. May the earth bless your harvests. May your hearth always know warmth, your table always know abundance, and your community always know generosity. Thank you all so much for watching this far. If you've enjoyed this talk, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the Pagan Hearth if you haven't already. It really does help us reach more people who are searching for a historically grounded, thoughtful, actionable paganism. If you have your own Lughnassadh traditions or reflections, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. We are the Pagan Hearth. May the gods walk beside you. May your ancestors watch over you. And as always, keep the hearth fires burning. Good night.